In a grand intergalactic council chamber, humanity's representative, Captain Rillan Forge, found himself in a position he never imagined, bargaining not with technology, but with the heart of a princess. The alien dignitaries sneered, their bioluminescent features flickering in amusement. To them, the human looked out of place. Earth was a fledgling civilization, and Rillan was nothing more than a soldier, selected as a last resort to negotiate a peace agreement between the Galactic Coalition and Earth. "You truly expect us to believe this human is worthy of inheriting our traditions?" scoffed a reptilian aristocrat, its serpentine eyes narrowing with disdain. The Varnax Emperor, whose scaled daughter, Princess Zera, was the key to this alliance, leaned back on his crystalline throne. The offer was simple: to prevent Earth's destruction, Rillan would need to marry Zera, a union intended to humiliate both Earth and the princess, an ugly match, according to their customs. To the aliens, Rillan's acceptance would make humanity the butt of a cosmic joke. Rillan met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. "I accept." The chamber erupted into laughter, every alien dignitary mocking him for what they believed was a foolish, desperate act. But behind their ridicule, Rillan saw a flicker of surprise. No one had expected him to say yes. When the Emperor leaned forward with a sinister smile, he announced, 3 cycles from now, the ceremony will commence." As guards escorted Rillan from the chamber, whispers of his supposed defeat echoed all around him. Yet, deep in his mind, Rillan knew he wasn't beaten. He had agreed to the marriage not out of defeat, but as an opportunity. Humanity had a chance to get its foot in the door, and he intended to make the most of it. Rillan was led through the alien palace corridors by shimmering guards, each step making the gravity feel heavier. Finally, the doors to a grand chamber opened, revealing Princess Zera for the first time. Unlike the Emperor's sneers, her expression was neutral, almost curious, an unreadable mask. Her exoskeleton shimmered like polished stone, but Rillan could see tension in the way her 4 slender arms rested, folded across her chest. "So, you are the human who accepted the ridiculous offer," Zera said with a raised brow, her voice carrying a musical hum through the translator embedded in Rillan's ear. Rillan gave her a half-smile. "And you are the princess forced to marry a barbarian from a backwater planet. We're both in for a strange ride." She tilted her head, clearly surprised by his easy manner. Strange indeed. The conversation felt awkward, but Rillan noticed something, the spark of intelligence in her gaze, the way her eyes softened when she wasn't being watched. This wasn't a spoiled royal playing a game. Zera was calculating, sharp, and perhaps just as trapped as Rillan was. A shared understanding hung between them, unspoken but palpable. In the following days, their interactions became more frequent. Zera explained Varnak's customs, traditions, and palace politics, ostensibly to prepare him for the wedding. However, their conversations began to drift beyond duty, into art, history, and their dreams of freedom. Zera's soft laughter, rare and fleeting, was like a quiet rebellion against the rigid expectations placed upon her. "What do you think Earth will gain from this alliance?" she asked one evening as they strolled through the bioluminescent garden. Rillan shrugged. "Maybe a future, maybe a chance to prove that humans can thrive here, among your kind, among the stars." Zera's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment, her alien beauty became something familiar, even comforting. "You are an unusual man, Captain Forge." Their delicate rapport didn't go unnoticed. Whispers spread throughout the palace, rumors that Zera and the human were growing closer than expected. Some saw it as a political advantage. Others saw it as a threat. Among them was General Tarkos, a stern military leader fiercely loyal to the Emperor and skeptical of the human's motives. The day before the wedding, Rillan was summoned unexpectedly by the Emperor. He stood before the towering monarch, whose expression was unreadable. "Your willingness to marry my daughter is intriguing," the Emperor said slowly, tapping his claws against the crystalline armrest. "Do you believe you can survive in our world?" Rillen answered with unwavering confidence, "Not only survive, I intend to thrive." The Emperor's cold smile hinted at something far more dangerous than Rillen expected. "We shall see. In 3 cycles, the first trial will begin. Not all who attempt it survive." Rillen felt a chill crawl down his spine. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a test. The dangerous one. The Emperor had raised the stakes, and Rillen would have to fight not only for Earth's survival, but his own. The morning of the wedding dawned beneath an alien sky, the sun casting eerie shades of violet across the towering spires of the Varnak's capital. But instead of ceremonies, Rillen found himself standing at the edge of an arena carved from ancient stone. The Emperor's trial had begun, an unexpected twist to test his worth before the wedding could proceed. "Your marriage is not guaranteed," the Emperor declared from his high throne, his voice echoing across the stadium filled with alien nobles. "If you survive this trial, you will earn your place. Fail, and the treaty dies with you." Rillen scanned the arena as the crowd jeered and hissed. He had no weapons, only his sharp instincts honed by years of military service. Across the field stood his opponent, a 4-armed warrior beast called a Vorin, its scales glinting in the sunlight, each movement predatory and deliberate. From the stands, Rillen caught sight of Princess Zara, her expression tight with worry, though she did her best to hide it. He could feel the weight of the alien court's judgment, waiting to see if the human was foolish enough to challenge their traditions, and whether he would die for it. "Begin," boomed the Emperor. The Vorin lunged, its claws gleaming. Rillen ducked, barely avoiding the swipe, his mind racing to find a strategy. He was outmatched physically, but years of combat training told him that brute strength wasn't everything. He needed to be faster and smarter. Rillen rolled to the side, grabbing a fistful of sand from the arena floor and flinging it into the Vorin's eyes. The creature roared in rage, momentarily blinded, and that was all the opening Rillen needed. He darted behind the beast, striking at the exposed tendons in its legs with precise blows. The crowd gasped, and murmurs rippled through the stands. But the Vorin wasn't done. It lashed out blindly, one claw catching Rillen's shoulder, sending him sprawling across the ground. Blood trickled from the wound, but Rillen gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand. Pain was temporary. Survival mattered more. Zara leaned forward from the balcony, gripping the edge with her lower hands as if willing Rillen to rise. He noticed her movement and felt an unexpected surge of determination. He wasn't just fighting for his survival. He was fighting for her trust and Earth's future. With a sharp breath, Rillen adjusted his stance. He couldn't win with brute force, but he could outmaneuver the beast. When the Vorin charged again, Rillen didn't retreat. Instead, he sidestepped, twisting his body and grabbing onto one of its 4 arms. Using the creature's momentum against it, he spun, sending the beast crashing into a nearby pillar with a thunderous impact. The arena fell silent, the crowd watching in stunned disbelief. Panting, Rillen stood over the fallen creature. "I don't need to be stronger," he muttered under his breath. "Just smarter." The Vorin let out a groan, unable to rise. The trial was over. The Emperor's booming laughter broke the silence, his crystalline throne shimmering as he clapped his hands. "The human shows cunning," he announced, though there was a hint of something darker in his voice. "Perhaps there is more to you than I thought." Rillen looked up at the Emperor's throne, locking eyes with the monarch. He knew that the trial was just the beginning. This was a game, a dangerous one, and the real challenge was yet to come. Later that evening, Rillen was escorted back to his quarters, the wound on his shoulder bandaged by palace medics. As he sat alone, replaying the fight in his mind, the door slid open, and Zara entered. "That was reckless," she whispered, her voice sharp, but not unkind. "You could have died." Rillen met her gaze, a small smile playing on his lips. "But I didn't." For a moment, Zara's stoic mask slipped, and he saw something else. Relief. She stepped closer, her forearms folded elegantly. "The court won't mock you now," she admitted softly. "But they won't trust you either. They'll be watching your every move." "Let them watch," Rillen replied. "I'm not here to win their favor. I'm here to make sure Earth survives." Zara gave him a long, considering look. "Maybe," she said quietly, "we're both fighting for more than just survival." For the first time since he arrived on this alien world, Rillen felt something unexpected. Hope. He and Zara might have been forced into this alliance, but together they could turn it into something far more powerful than the Emperor had intended. Days after the trial, Rillen's victory in the arena was still the talk of the Varnak's court. Nobles whispered behind his back, and the alien aristocracy watched his every move with veiled suspicion and reluctant curiosity. Some admired his tenacity, while others, particularly the Emperor's military elite, saw his success as an affront to their traditions. "They think you're dangerous now," Zara warned as they walked through the palace's lush bioluminescent gardens. "A human who wins respect so easily. They fear what you might become." Rillen gave her a sidelong glance. Good. He knew well enough that fear could be a weapon, just as much as strength. "Let them wonder what I'll do next." But even as the court buzzed with intrigue, darker forces stirred beneath the surface. General Tarkos, the Emperor's most trusted military advisor, had grown increasingly vocal about his distrust of the human. Tarkos believed Earth was weak, and more importantly, unworthy of any alliance with the Varnak's empire. Late one evening, as Rillen was preparing for another diplomatic dinner, Zara slipped into his chambers with an urgent expression. "You're in danger," she whispered, her voice low and hurried. "Tarkos doesn't want this alliance to succeed. He's planning to frame you, to make it look like you're conspiring against the Emperor." Rillen felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know this?" Zara's gaze flickered with hesitation. "I have allies. Not everyone in the court supports my father's heavy-handed rule." She stepped closer, lowering her voice further. "We need to stay ahead of Tarkos. If he can discredit you, the Emperor will have no choice but to dissolve the treaty, and Earth will lose its only chance at survival." Rillen's mind raced. He had expected resistance from the Varnak's elite, but Tarkos was a far greater threat than mere insults and mockery. The general wasn't just trying to humiliate him, he was trying to destroy him. "We'll need evidence," Rillen said, his expression hardening. "If we can expose Tarkos's plan, we'll turn the court against him." Zara nodded, her dark eyes gleaming. "I know someone who might help." The next night, under the cover of darkness, Rillen and Zara slipped out of the palace and made their way to a hidden part of the capital city. There, they met with Kelvax, an information broker and one of Zara's secret allies. The alien's glowing eyes darted nervously between them as he handed over a data crystal. "This contains intercepted communications," Kelvax whispered. "Tarkos has been contacting factions outside the Empire. He's planning to sabotage the alliance, and he isn't working alone." Rillen took the crystal, his jaw tightening. "We need to move fast." The following evening, the palace held a grand banquet to celebrate the upcoming wedding. Hylian nobles from across the galaxy gathered to toast the strange union between human and alien royalty. The Emperor presided over the event with cold amusement, while General Tarkos glared at Rillen from across the hall, his eyes full of suspicion. Rillen kept his expression neutral, even as the weight of the data crystal in his pocket reminded him of the delicate game they were playing. Zara sat beside him at the long banquet table, her posture regal and composed, though Rillen could sense the tension beneath her calm exterior. When the Emperor raised a goblet in a mock toast to Earth's brave representative, Rillen returned the gesture with a small, polite smile. "To new alliances," he said, his tone smooth, "and to those who believe in unity." Tarkos's eyes narrowed, his claws tapping rhythmically against the table. He knew something was coming, but not what. Later that night, after the banquet ended, Rillen and Zara slipped away to confront Tarkos in his private chambers. They found him alone, reviewing military reports on a holographic screen. The general sneered as they entered, I knew the human wouldn't stay in his place. Rillen held up the data crystal, his expression cold. We know what you've been planning, Tarkos. This ends now. Tarkos's sneer deepened, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. You think the Emperor will believe you. You're just a pawn in this game, human. Rillen stepped closer, his voice low and deliberate. Maybe, but if the Emperor finds out you've been making deals with his enemies, you'll lose more than just your reputation. The general's face twisted with rage, but he knew the truth. Rillen had outmaneuvered him. The next morning, Rillen and Zera presented the evidence to the Emperor in a private audience. The monarch listened in silence as the intercepted communications played on a holographic screen. His expression remained unreadable, but when the recording ended, his golden eyes turned to Tarkos, who stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale with fury. You have betrayed my trust, the Emperor said, his voice cold and final. Leave this palace. Your rank and honor are forfeit. Tarkos stormed out, defeated and humiliated. As the doors closed behind him, Rillen let out a slow breath. They had won, but the game was far from over. Zera glanced at Rillen, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. I underestimated you, Captain. Rillen returned the smile. Get used to it. With Tarkos defeated, the path to their wedding, and the fragile alliance between Earth and the Varnax Empire, was finally clear. But both Rillen and Zera knew that the real battle was just beginning. The grand wedding was set beneath the gleaming sky of the Varnax capital. Towers of glass-like stone shimmered in the alien sun, and bioluminescent plants wove through the palace, glowing with soft hues of blue and gold. The royal court buzzed with anticipation. The alien nobles gathered not out of joy, but to witness whether this strange marriage between human and alien would collapse under pressure. Rillen stood at the center of the hall, his ceremonial robes feeling both heavy and foreign. The weight of countless alien eyes pressed down on him, each noble waiting for the slightest misstep. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a test, and everyone hoped to see the human fail. As the music swelled, the doors at the far end of the hall parted. Princess Zera entered, her elegant form gliding across the floor. Her forearms moved with measured grace, and her opalescent exoskeleton shimmered in the dim light. For a moment, Rillen could only watch her, mesmerized by how effortlessly she carried the weight of expectation on her shoulders. When she reached him, their eyes met. In that brief exchange, they both understood. This union was no longer just a political arrangement. It was a partnership forged in fire. The Emperor stood over the ceremony, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement as the officiant began the ancient rites. Rillen and Zera exchanged symbolic vows, their words resonating through the hall. For the alien court, these were mere formalities, but to Rillen and Zera, every word carried an unspoken promise. As they clasped hands, Rillen's calloused human fingers brushing against Zera's cool, armored skin, a quiet ripple of surprise spread through the nobles. No one had expected them to look so comfortable together. It was more than just duty now. With a low, resonant tone, the officiant declared them bound under Varnax law. The crowd clapped with polite indifference, but there was a palpable tension in the air. This was not the end of the ceremony. This was merely the beginning. Just as the Emperor prepared to deliver the final blessing, a loud, piercing alarm echoed through the hall. The gathered nobles stiffened, their elegant forms shifting uneasily. Zera turned to her father, her expression darkening. What's happening? Before the Emperor could respond, a soldier burst into the room, his armor scorched and cracked. We're under attack, he shouted, his voice sharp with panic. An unknown fleet has breached the outer defenses. The room erupted into chaos. Nobles fled toward the exits, guards rushed to secure the palace, and the Emperor's face twisted into a snarl of rage. Rillen exchanged a glance with Zera. The wedding was over, but their real trial had just begun. We need to reach the command center, Zera said, gripping Rillin's arm with urgency. If the palace falls, the Alliance dies with it. Rillin and Zara sprinted through the twisting corridors of the palace as explosions rocked the walls around them. Alien guards scrambled to form defensive positions, while officers shouted orders in languages Rillin couldn't understand. When they reached the command center, General Tarkos was waiting. His face was twisted with fury, and his eyes burned with betrayal. "You should have stayed in your chambers, human," he hissed. Before Rillin could respond, Tarkos drew a weapon, a sleek, alien blade that hummed with lethal energy. Zara moved to intercept him, but Rillin stepped forward, raising a hand to stop her. "No," he said quietly. "This is my fight." Tarkos snarled, "You won't leave this room alive." Rillin squared his shoulders, his heart pounding. "Then let's find out." Tarkos lunged, his blade cutting through the air in a blur. Rillin dodged, every instinct honed from years of combat kicking in. He knew he couldn't match Tarkos in raw strength, but he didn't need to. He just needed to outthink him. The duel was fast and brutal. Rillin used the environment to his advantage, forcing Tarkos into tight corners and striking whenever the alien general overextended. The energy blade hummed dangerously close to Rillin's skin, but he kept his focus razor sharp, waiting for an opening. Finally, Tarkos made a mistake. He lunged too far, and Rillin pivoted, driving his shoulder into the alien's midsection and knocking the blade from his hand. Tarkos stumbled, and Rillin seized the moment. With a swift movement, he disarmed the general and pinned him against the wall. "It's over," Rillin said, breathing hard. Tarkos sneered, blood dripping from his lip. "This alliance will never last." Rillin's grip tightened. "We'll see about that." Zara stepped forward, her expression unreadable as she looked between Rillin and Tarkos. Without hesitation, she activated her communicator, summoning guards to take the disgraced general into custody. As Tarkos was dragged away, Zara turned to Rillin, her dark eyes gleaming. "You just saved the Alliance and the Empire." Rillin gave her a tired smile. "I figured it was worth fighting for." Before Zara could respond, the command center's main screen flickered to life, displaying the enemy fleet outside the palace walls. The battle wasn't over yet, but now they had a chance. The screen in the command center revealed the magnitude of the threat. A rogue faction, not aligned with the Empire, attacking the Varnak's capital in a coordinated strike. Their ships hovered like predatory beasts, firing plasma bursts at the palace's shielded walls. The Alliance was at risk of crumbling before it even began. Rillin looked at Zara, determination burning in his eyes. "We need to stop this fleet, or everything we fought for will mean nothing." Zara nodded, her voice steady. "We take command of the defense forces. Together." They activated the palace's defense grid from the command center, routing troops to key positions and coordinating with ships in orbit. But it wasn't enough. The enemy fleet outnumbered them 2-1. Rillin leaned over the holographic map, calculating options. "We can't fight them head-on," he said, pointing at weak spots in the enemy formation. "But if we strike here, we'll cut off their supply line and force them to retreat." Zara's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "You think like a Varnak's general." With a plan in place, Rillin and Zara boarded a strike vessel, leading a small but elite force into space. Rillin took the helm, piloting the ship through the enemy blockade with skill born from years of combat training. "Hang on," he shouted as the ship narrowly avoided a plasma burst. Their vessel weaved through the chaos, slipping past enemy fighters and zeroing in on the enemy flagship. "If we disable their command ship, the rest of the fleet will fall apart," Zara said, gripping the console beside him. Rillin nodded, his hands steady on the controls. "Then let's make them regret coming here." Their ship punched through the enemy flagship's shields, docking at a breach point. Rillin and Zara led the assault team onto the ship, their weapons drawn. The halls were filled with hostile soldiers, but Rillin's military instincts kicked in. He moved swiftly, covering Zara as they pushed through the corridors. In the heart of the ship, They found the enemy commander, a hulking alien with a cruel smile. "You shouldn't have come here, human." The alien sneered. "This alliance won't last." Rillen leveled his weapon. "I've heard that before." The battle in the command center was fierce. Zara fought with the precision of a warrior born, her forearms moving in fluid strikes. Rylan fought at her side, every move perfectly synchronized with hers. They fought not just as allies, but as equals. With one final blast, they disabled the flagship's core systems, sending the ship into disarray. The remaining enemy fleet faltered without leadership, retreating from the capital in defeat. Back in the palace, the Emperor addressed the gathered nobles. "The human has fought with honor," he declared, his voice booming through the hall. "Rillen Forge and Princess Zara have proven that strength comes not just from power, but from unity." The court murmured in disbelief. What had begun as a mockery had transformed into a true alliance, one forged in battle and sealed in mutual respect. As the Emperor stepped down from his throne, he turned to Rylan. "You've done more than survive, human. You've earned your place here." In the quiet moments following the battle, Rillen and Zara stood together on the balcony of the palace, watching the sun rise over the alien city. "So, we did it," Rillen said, his voice soft. "We saved the alliance." Zara smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "We did more than that. We built something new." Rillen looked at her, a sense of calm settling over him for the first time since he had arrived in the Varnax Empire. "What now?" he asked. Zara's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Now we show the galaxy what happens when a human and a Varnax stand together." The alliance between Earth and the Varnax Empire became the foundation for a new era of cooperation across the galaxy. Rylan and Zara's partnership stood as a symbol of unity, proving that even the most unlikely of bonds could withstand the greatest challenges. Together, they navigated the complexities of intergalactic politics, fought off new threats, and led their people toward a brighter future. And in every council meeting, every battlefield, and every quiet moment they shared, they remembered the lesson that had guided them through it all. True strength comes not from power, but from standing together when the galaxy expects you to fall apart.